Everyone. I am continuing today on the theme of good representation, and I am specifically, at least for now, focusing on female representation and specifically the times when I have felt moved by a certain type of representation, just from a personal standpoint. Because I think for a lot of us, representation is a personal thing. We want to know we are out. We want to know we're not alone. We want to know that someone is listening to us, that someone sees us. And yes, ideally, we get that from real life. We get that from our friends. We get that from our family. But we do get a lot, there's really no way of escaping it. We get a lot of conditioning from the media, from the books we read, from the TV shows and the movies that we watch. They give us ideas about what is normal and what is not, what is good behavior and what is not. And perhaps most importantly for this topic of conversation, what's expected of you? What does the world want from you? So I did a little bit of research, cursory research, by going onto YouTube and typing into the search box best female characters in movies. Just to see what would come up. And what ended up coming up were videos with titles like these. Why Modern Movies Suck, the Strong Female Character. Strong female characters are ruining movies. Hollywood's continuous problem with female characters. It seems that there is a whole cottage industry on YouTube of complaints about how female characters are depicted in movies and on television now, and how much better things were in the 1970s and 1980s. Yes, the very decades when I was like, where's my representation? Why do I always feel moved to identify with the male characters? Why can't there be a female character worth identifying with? Those decades that I remember living through and not being satisfied with are the same decades that videos like these and commentators like these are saying are much, much better than what we have today. Now, I will do something perhaps a little bit surprising to those who know me. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Because sometimes when I read these commentators, I feel that a lot of them are bothered by some of the same things that I was bothered by when I was looking at the female characters I had growing up. Specifically, even though we've come so far and we see a lot of different kinds of women doing different kinds of things, it seems like there's one thing we still can't quite get past. And that is this idea of gender being the most important or the central factor of identity in female characters. That everything seems to pivot, for good or bad, everything seems to pivot around the character's gender. And of course, that can alienate male viewers if everything seems to revolve around the character as a woman rather than as a person. I can see how that can keep certain viewers at arm's length. So, if that's the problem, then I can kind of understand that maybe we haven't come forward as much as we've come sideways. We've covered ground, but how much of it is actually progress? How much progress do we still have to make? And there's a reason why, I think, because these these commentators will always be quick to tell you we don't hate female characters. We just hate them when they're badly written. And the one character they will always mention as an example of good female character writing is Ripley from the 1979 movie Alien and its sequels. And this I will definitely say on Ripley's behalf. One of the things that I appreciate about her, at least in the 1979 film, was that her situation, her personality, her choices, they don't revolve around gender. There's a reason why the character was not specifically written to be played by a woman. It was written completely gender neutral, and normally, because male is default, the character would have been played by a man. And somebody got the idea, okay, well, let's cast a woman instead, or let's cast Sigourney Weaver in this role. And a female character icon was born. So that's really what I would love to see a little bit more of, that I don't think we've gotten there yet. Characters who just happen to be female, rather than characters whose entire situation, whose entire position within the story revolves around their femaleness, revolves around their gender, where either their gender is an obstacle or it is a key factor in success. It's always a factor somewhere, somehow. And it would be nice to see us move beyond that. Again, we're not there yet. But this video is called Good Representation, not Bad Representation, not Could Be Better Representation. So unlike a lot of the videos that I see on YouTube on this subject, I want to focus on the positive. I want to focus on where they're getting it right, or at least where I have responded positively. And I want to focus more on characters from family entertainment, cartoon characters, because those were the kinds of characters that I missed seeing while I was young. And around about the late 1980s, something wonderful happened with regard to female cartoon characters. Somebody figured out, somewhere along the way, that female cartoon characters can be funny. Somebody figured out, hey, we can make these characters quirky, we can make them flawed, we can make them clumsy. And even if we could even exaggerate their virtues for comic effect. These characters can be fun. We started seeing these kinds of characters, unfortunately, when I, in my late teens, had decided that I was too old for cartoons. I went through that phase. Thankfully, it was not a very long phase, because I started getting drawn into them pretty quickly. The Tiny Toon Adventures was one of the first examples of this kind of thing that I can remember. Babs Bunny, where you have, instead of just one Bugs Bunny prototype, you have two. You've got Buster Bunny and then you have Babs Bunny. And she's just as quirky and weird and hyper as he is. And I didn't remember really seeing that kind of character back when I was a kid. And then we had Animaniacs come shortly after that, and Dot Warner appeared on the scene. Now, I may not be much like Babs or see myself much in Babs or Dot, but they did help fill a hole, and I started watching, particularly Animaniacs. I became an Animaniacs fan in the early 90s, and I absolutely loved how quirky and off the wall and funny Dot Warner was. Even though I know there are people who had problems with the opening And the way that she was described, her thing is that she's cute. But in the actual stories, they moved her beyond that. In the actual adventures that she would have, she would be, well, something of a what TV tropes calls a badass adorable. She was a force to be reckoned with. On the same show, you also had the character of Slappy Squirrel. And Slappy's whole backstory is that back in the 30s and 40s, she was a cartoon character who had all these various adventures opposite a certain set of antagonists, much like a Bugs Bunny type character. So at this point, or at the time and period in which the show is set and her cartoons are set, she's older and she's grumpy and she's antisocial. She is, quote, unlikable. She's also funny as heck in certain shorts that she is the central character in are favorites of mine. So, yeah, gotta love Slappy, even though she's not much like me, and I hope I don't age into her. I gotta give mad respect to Slappy Squirrel. Around this same time period, Disney had its own round of cartoons, Disney Afternoon. Now, Animaniacs was not quite specifically courting children. A lot of the things that they did probably would have resonated with a teen or young adult audience more. And the Disney afternoons were more specifically dedicated to a child audience. But here's the great thing, at their best, these cartoons did not talk down to children. When a good cartoon tells a good story that doesn't talk down to its target audience, then it is more likely that people who are outside that target audience can get in on the fun and can appreciate it as well. And one character that I discovered actually a little bit earlier than I found Dot Warner was some Goslin Mallard from the old series Darkwing Duck. Came out while I was getting my bachelor's degree. And I would go back to my dorm room in the afternoons and watch Darkwing Duck before doing my homework or after doing some of my homework, and then I would finish it later. Because Goslin was such a wild, hyperactive tomboy. She wasn't as bookish, wasn't as brainy as kind of I wish she had been, but she was fearless, she was flawed, and the thing that I loved about her is that she felt unique to me. I had not really seen a whole bunch of characters like that before, and I haven't seen them as much since. So that really was, I think, a turning point toward the better, a turning point toward progress in terms of the way that female characters were represented in children's and family media. And I'm running out of time. I cannot make these videos too long because then YouTube won't post them. So I'm going to have to leave it to the next chapter to start talking about some characters that I see in today's family media, or at least in the past couple of decades, family media that have resonated strongly with me, and that helped me get a little bit of what I was looking for back when I was 10, 11, or 12. So part 3 will come soon. I will see all of you then.